Hello, everyone. Welcome to Snap Take. This is Glazer of the Snap Judgments podcast, and it's OTA Update Day. Well, it's OTA Update Day for me. It's day after OTA Update for you guys. Today, we're going to be looking at the updates, and I have two decks for each of the buffed cards. Before we get there, though, I need you to like, sub, and hit that notification bell. Make sure you sub. Every weekday we have a Snap Take. We're doing hour-long extra videos with friends of the show, and we have our 2-hour podcast releasing basically every Tuesday, Wednesdays when there is a larger patch. Cool. That out of the way, let's look at these updates. First, we have Orka. Orka went from a 6'9 to a 6'11. That means he's a 6'16 if he's the only card in the lane. Nice, simple update for our boy Orka. Not bad. We have Collector, 2-1 to 2-2. Same exact ability, but goes to 2-2. And we have Luke Cage, who is now also a 2-2. First, let's go over why I think these were buffed. First, Orca's just like never played, right? Orka is buffed here literally because no one sees him. No one plays him. Our boy Twin Sons at TwinSun77 on YouTube plays him, but almost no one else does. So, with that the case, they buffed Orka. Nice, simple buff. We're gonna get probably one of these unplayable cards buffs almost every week. Does this make Orka good? Maybe. It makes it at least decent, right? Like there's a home for Orka in a deck or two now. We'll get to that momentarily. Why buff the collector? Well, I think partially because there's $100 bundle that has the collector in it right now. And if that card is at all playable, that bundle is way better. But I think there are ways to make collector the best statted 2-drop in the game, or one of the best statted 2-drops in the game right now. And that probably is enough to start getting him into a deck or two. We're going to take a look at those decks. I think he's a reasonable choice for 2-drops if you're running certain decks now. Cool. Thanks for the $100 bundle. 10,000 tokens was enough to entice me to buy it. I respect and understand why some people are morally opposed to spending that much money on the game. Hey, live your best life. All right, Luke Cage is a 2-2 now. I think this buff has one major reason, and that reason is High Evolutionary is coming. The way High Evolutionary is going to work is High Evolutionary. Sorry, I have a cat hair on my mic and it's driving me absolutely insane. There we go. The way High Evolutionary works is most of the cards that High Evolutionary gives effects to give negative power. You combine that to the Hazmat, I think we've got a critical mass of negative power decks. Great. Luke Cage getting better means, hey, get ready to use them. Much like Enchantress getting better last week and Sandman getting worse, we're like, hey, Nebula's coming, get ready for that. These are get ready for the next thing updates. We think the meta is going to shift in this way, so we're preemptively changing things. The first place to play Orka, I think, is in a Destroyer list, where you just sort of replace Destroyer. This is the first version I threw together. It runs Spectrum here. If for when you don't Orka and you've gone wide, that should be able to win some games. All right, what do you want to do with this list? I mean, you want to basically try and fill up a lane, get nice and big power with Ant-Man, Iron Man, etc. If you can do that in one lane, you're going to be really well set up to Orca in another lane, that 6-16, which is a 6-18 if Mr. Fantastic is one of the cards in the middle, is stellar. I really wanted Claw here, but I thought Iron Man was too important to winning one lane. The other way you can win a lane, and you can ramp Atoma or Warpath, is you can go Atoma or Warpath into Professor X. Then in that other lane, you're trying to pile stuff up, and Spectrum, right? Like your Ant-Man, your Armor, so on. And then your Mr. Fantastic Spectrum. And that should be able to win another lane. That should be a lot of power. Either one of these should work. This is the old classic ongoing destroyer, and everyone's going to expect that destroyer, meaning they're going to think you can't play in certain lanes, right? Because like you have to play destroyer into that Cosmore armor. Well, you don't want to play Orca into that. And even if you sack the Warpath power, they're probably just going to try and win that lane they expect you to play in, right? So Orca should be a good way to get cubes. The other home for Orca I'm seeing right now is Move Orca. This is your standard move list. The whole bottom of the curve is standard move until you get to here. Shuri into Vision is absolutely fantastic. Obviously, this is a great way to win games. If you Shuri into Vision, you move Vision wherever you want. Last turn, The joke about move players is you always know what they're going to do on the last turn, right? They just have to compete. And very often, the way they compete is they beat your solo Heimdall. Well, what if you leave the other cards where they are and instead you drop 16 power? Now it seems much harder for them to plan. I also added a little bit of extra spice. Nothing major here, but I threw Beast in because Iron Fist, Human Torch, and Cloak with Beast are a fantastic combo. It's also a really good way to clear a little bit of space for yourself on the board. I think that this deck is actually probably really good. Don't tell Kraken Null. But I think Orka's real secret home beyond the obvious one lane thing is going to be a deck like this that can suddenly have an empty lane for Orka to get big in. Next up, we are on our decks for the collector. The first collector deck I'm calling Big Waves, Big Hand Waves. All right. This is basically a deck, honestly, for those of you who don't have Darkhawk. Darkhawk is probably better than this version. However, we've got Agent 13 to give power, Sentinel, Moon Girl, Coulson, and White Queen. All of these give a nice boost to Collector. He's very easy going to be a 2/6, 2/7, 2/8. Seems good for basically doing what the deck's going to want to do anyway, right? Your other plays are you can Moon Girl and just double Devil Dino on 5, Devil Dino on 6, always a pain in the butt to beat. Or you can Devil Dino and then double Mystique, which is, again, a nightmare to beat. You can do the Moon Girl, and then you've got skip 5, assuming you have Quinjet out. You've got double She-Hulk shenanigans, and Collector being really big at that point is really nice. Or you can forego all that, and you always have a Doomwave backup plan for when that's the best play. Cool. I think this deck is reasonable. I'd really, really, really like a second good target for Mystique here, but as I was looking, nothing seemed to really fit. So you run Mystique, and if she ends up being a dead card, you're a little sad, but because you're drawing so many cards with this deck, it shouldn't be like an I have to play Mystique situation. It should be a viable option to do whatever you would like. First card to cut here, by the way, is Agent 13. She's good, but could easily be the recently released Nebula. Or even a Cosmo if you're scared of Enchantress, because Enchantress is everywhere. But you do only have one important ongoing, so just play with care. All right. This deck is going to be sick, I think. At the start, when MODOK first came out, there were these decks that's job was basically to make Morbius and Collector huge. Well, bumping Collector means that these decks are likely back, and I think the reason those decks weren't really great in the first place was that absolutely everywhere were those Shuri decks. I think this deck, with its discard roulette, should be able to chuck a lot of cards. Your goals are to chuck Swarm and Helicarrier with Collector out. Swarm makes Collector a 2/4, Helicarrier makes it a 2/5 if you manage to discard them both. That is plus 5 power. That's a 2/7. You now have the biggest 2-drop in the game. If you can do this multiple times, thanks to Lockjaw or whatever else, you win, right? The other ways to win are you have Storm. Storm locks down a lane, and then with either Collector or Morbius, you should have enough power to take that lane over. You're going to be able to drop much more power in that lane. And you also have the ability to just do that and then just play a giant ass Apocalypse. Unfortunately, Dracula has to go from this deck. I could not figure out a way to do all of this stuff and keep Dracula, but I think this is the best version of the deck. America's here for extra consistency. I guess if you don't care about that, you can run Dracula in that spot, but I really, really don't suggest that. Next up, we have the Luke Cage decks. I really, 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 really want to fit Wong in this. Don't be surprised if the eventual best version of this runs Wong. Have to be over Mr. Fantastic, and it hurts too much to cut him with Storm in the deck. But the idea of this deck is that you've got your standard Cerebro 2, and you've got a little toxic package. Weaken their stuff, pump your stuff, win the game. There's nothing fancy here. It came down to M'Baku versus Iceman. I can see either being right, but I wanted to say there's always room for Pro 2. So we went with M'Baku. I don't actually know which is better. Goose's goal is to protect your Luke Cage, protect your Cerebro with Enchantress everywhere now. That's going to be the real threat to this deck right now. The sheer abundance of Enchantress is going to be scary for those of you playing this, so you want to try and get at least some of your stuff set up in your Storm lane or under Goose. This way, you can't have your life ruined. Once Luke Cage is out, Hazmat has already basically been canceled, so you can always just Hazmat away, right? Okay. Finally, we have my favorite deck of all of these. Last season, our friend Elite Hassa hit Infinite with a deck I called Monkey Flu. It was running one card different. Excuse me. It was running it was not running America Chavez. It was running, I don't know, something along the lines of Goose. Goose was an absolute necessity in the meta back then because, well, the meta was Red Skull Shuri, and Goose was one of the better answers, better ways to absolutely kill that deck. Well, that deck's gone, and in its place are largely a lot of She-Hulk decks, a lot of decks that are trying to go under you. So Goose is still a good card, but Goose is no longer a busted card. So instead of Goose, we're running America for consistency. What are we trying to do with this deck? Well, we've got Luke. Luke gets better here. I actually think this deck might have been better even without the Luke buff, but the Luke buff obviously doesn't hurt it. The idea is you can make everything a 1/3, absolutely every card in the deck except America, who should never be in your hand when you play her, and Sarah, who cares, benefit. Mysterio becomes a 3/9 if you get Luke out. 2/9 if you get Luke out, he becomes a 2/10. Cool. That's a lot of power in that Bast combo, right? What else can you do? Well, you've got Wong into Hazmat, Absorbing Man, or you've got Wong into Hitmonkey, Absorbing Man. Either one of those are absolutely busted power. These are the combos you're trying to get. But that means you need to get Sarah out, you need to get Zabu out, and you need to get Wong or Absorbing Man relatively early. You also really like to see Bast, Angela, and Bishop on curve. Well, let's run an 11-card deck functionally then with America and solve that problem. I think this deck is legit. I'm going to test this. I'm ranked 95 right now. I should be infinite, but it's been a stressful day at work and I didn't have time. But I'm going to actually try this out at 95 to see exactly how it plays because I have a really, really good feeling. All right. That's what I would do with the OTA updated cards. We're out for the weekend. We'll be back Monday. Monday, I've got the decks that have been carrying. Let's hope I'm infinite. I can talk about the deck that actually makes me infinite. So I have the free time this weekend. I'm sure I'll hit it. If I don't, I don't. Life happens. But we're going to look at either the decks that got me to infinite, or we're going to look at the very best decks I've found this season. Spoiler, there's a lot of overlap in those two subjects. Have a great weekend. See you Monday for another Snap Take. Subscribe, people. You know you want to.